Well, I'm super excited to kick off this panel. Uh, this is really a time dedicated to exploring kind of what law firm adoption is like, or AI adoption is like inside law firms, and especially focusing on the human element. So we've had individual conversations and a prep call last week, and as we were going through that, the group is just dynamic, full of really interesting tidbits and experiences. And so, frankly, I'm really keen to hear what is discussed and talked about today. We have some existing kind of paths we think we're going to go, but with this group, we might explore something else. So I'm really excited about that. I think to kick off, we'll do a quick round of introductions. I'm Kellen Ball. I work at Confido Legal as the head of banking and also with partnerships. And I'll throw the ball over to you, Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Merryman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Taylor King Law in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. We are a personal injury law firm with about 24 attorneys and 75 users on our CSM, which is Litify.
Great, and maybe over to you, Lashay.
Hi, I'm Lashay Dodd. I'm the Director of Operations for the Driscoll firm. I manage our personal injury side of the firm. The firm's legacy is in mass torts, but we have since opened up for personal injury in the last 3 years. I'm based out of Chicago, but the firm has offices across 4 states and Puerto Rico.
Great. And Beth, over to you.
Hi, I am Beth Bell. I'm the Director of Operations at Defer Varan. I'm located in our Muncie office. We're a 124-year-old law firm in Indiana. We have 3 offices, about 31 attorneys, about 75 users overall on Clio is the management system that we use, and kind of a soup to nuts law firm, a little bit of everything general practice. Mostly in Indiana, but also our dispute resolution group is practiced in federal appeals courts all the way up to the Supreme Court. So a little bit of everything.
You're getting a shout out from Nancy there, Beth. Also in Indiana.
Hi.
So I guess I should also chime in. So Confido Legal, we exclusively support law firms in their payment acceptance and disbursement, and would welcome this conversation in terms of AI and more around the change management. So really just digging in there. So I think just to kick off, the first topic that I'd love to explore is really around like, what are some of the fears and drivers of AI adoption within firms? Things can be quite hard, and yet there seems to be this recognition that firms that don't use AI are going to be at a strict disadvantage. So that's one of the promoters. But with that, I'd love to lob the ball and throw it over to whoever's wants to lead us off.
Well, I mean, if we want to talk about fears first, I mean, the main fear, I think, for attorneys is legitimacy in AI. How can we verify this material that's coming at us? Lawyers have to sign their name to whatever they do. It's always been the case. So that's nothing new. If their paralegal does something, they are still responsible for it. Opening it up into the tech world, into AI, we're throwing more and more information at them that they are still responsible for. And so the systems that we're looking at, the programs that we're exploring, that we're using in our firms, we need to be assured that information that it's providing us is accurate, it's providing value to our clients, and that we can verify where that information is coming from.
For sure. But to kind of piggyback off of that too, you mentioned how lawyers have always had to do this. Like they've always had to verify information, whether their paralegal or legal assistant created it, they still had to check. And so now I think you have that extra step, which might be unique to your firm, where you guys don't have as many paralegals, whereas like Emily and our firm, we do have a lot of that support staff. The expectation for us is that there is some sort of verification from the support staff before it even reaches that attorney. I'm expecting that they're going to go through and clean that stuff up and make sure they're removing the junk information or hopefully no hallucinated information, but if it's there, to get rid of it and correct it before it even reaches the attorney, because otherwise we're just piling on to all of the things that they have to double check before it goes out.
And I think that from the staff side of things, the other kind of fear that we've experienced is that the staff fear the loss of jobs. So as soon as they hear we're bringing AI to the table, they immediately kind of put up a wall of I've got to protect myself and my position. And so communicating that that is not the case has been one of our challenges. But then from the other side of it, I think from an operational standpoint, it's the great unknown in terms of how are you going to structure your staffing and any oversight for these verifications that need to happen. And so there's that fear that the way I've always managed the firm is changing, and that do I have enough time to get my foundation built for managing this? That's it. That's a big fear that we experience here.
And thinking about some of our prep conversations really centered around the AI is not just happening in the space of kind of the major AI players that are maybe putting together the cases, but it's happening kind of in all the tools that firms may have, some of which might be client facing. So how are you, like, I guess, can you talk a little bit about like how are you managing the pace of change, given that your roles are in, operations, so you kind of see it all?
It is breakneck. I'm exhausted. I think that it's so it's a different way of managing. Like I said earlier, so you go from, let's compare it to onboarding a new CSM software. While it is evolving as you're implementing and migrating your data and implementing the processes and procedures involved with that software, they largely are static. It's like, oh, you turn on your computer, you hit this button does this, and that button does that. The difference in AI is it changes every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. So keeping up with training, keeping up with managing your own knowledge base, if you miss one email, you're behind in terms of the tools updating. And so it's just, I don't have an answer for it. Like how do you manage? I don't know. I do know it's different. It's a completely different way of operating than we did 6 months ago.
It's constant. Like you said, it's constant. You have to stay on the ball, especially knowing that so many companies want to be the ones who are revolutionizing things. They want to be first. They want to have the features that other companies don't have. So they're always adding things, getting the live feedback from firms that they work with, their clients. And because of that, we in operations have to make sure that we're always changing the governance and the policies around what people can and cannot do, what's permissible and what's not, because something that AI wasn't able to do last week, you talk to your rep and then suddenly they're telling you, oh, we'll have it by the end of the month. And it's like, okay, well, now I have to plan for that. I thought it was going to take a bit of time, and you have to restructure your systems and your infrastructure in order to accommodate whatever this seemingly minute change would be, but it impacts 6 different people. So you have to keep up with it. It's a lot.
And it's a lot just to figure out what is out there and what is going to work for what your needs are. What is it exactly you want to get out of this AI program? Are you, what tech ecosphere are you existing in? So are you going to go with the Gemini route? Are you Google Workspace based? Are you Microsoft 365? And so you're going to integrate Copilot into what you do. How do those interact with Google Sheets and Excel? And one may be more text driven, one may be more, formula driven. Do you want something like Lexis Protege, which is super heavy on the legal and draws from legal documents? Looking then to something like Claude or Harvey, are those expenses worth it? All of those different things. Do you want something that's going to capture billable time? And you look at like what billables AI is doing. Do you want calendaring and look at like HONA? What is going to work? Because what's going to work for your firm isn't necessarily going to work for my firm, even if we are in the same city, in the same building, working the exact same hours, the same number of people. It's so hard to parse and figure out, that salesman, their job is to sell it to you. They're going to show you all the bells and whistles, and it's exciting. I mean, you see these demos and it all looks great. It's going to solve every problem we have. But then really sit back and think, is this what our clients need? Is this what our staff and attorneys need? And is this really what's going to bring value to us? And in the end, will we be able to see the ROIs to prove that we made the right choice to begin with?
Yeah. And even, Beth, you mentioned how it could be the same firm, but within your firm, you have so many different practice areas that one AI that might work for one group won't work for the other group. Like our firm, we have mass torts and personal injury, and it's been a bit of a struggle even to find a platform that we want to use that works for both departments, but also meets our financial requirements, meets what our people are going to be capable of doing. So I can only imagine having so many different practice areas under one firm. How can you even begin? I'm serious. I would be spinning my head, because how do you even begin to get something that can satisfy all those different groups?
And it's hard, because I think attorneys, sometimes they get in their practice groups and they run them like their own little individual fiefdoms. This is how we are going to run things, which works great in most cases. But sometimes we have to be able to come together with some cohesive plan. Let's get your data figured out first. Let's do some things more consistently. Otherwise, we can't have 10 different programs for 10 different practice areas.
Yeah.
So we've got to be able to come together to get our processes and workflows somewhat consistent to be able to make these programs work. Garbage in, garbage out. If we don't have the information there for that AI program to pull from, it's not going to do a lot of good.
I'll say one more thing on that. I know Kellen's itching for the next question, but wrapping up kind of what Beth was saying is we kind of had to come above those decisions, because you're exactly right. It was absolutely endless, like the options, the opportunities. And I also realized that if I tied my attorneys hands who were already dabbling in their own AI tools, I was going to have a really hard time fostering adoption. So we ultimately came up with the idea that we would choose one tool that we would invest in, and selected that from the myriad of options. And then our policy became, you can use whatever tools you want to augment that, not putting any client data into any source that's not closed. That's part of our policy, but you can choose that, whatever tools you want to augment with. I just want to know about it. So we have a form that you fill out and say, hey, I'm using Gemini, I'm using Lexis, whatever I'm using to augment the tool that we provide. I just want to know it. I want to know what you're using. And if I have a question about use case, then I'll reach out and ask that question. So that was kind of how we solved the millions of choices, and also to support adoption, to let them do a little self-selection.
Yeah, I think I was going to double click into, it sounded like there's a distinction between allowing the practice areas to choose their own tools for optimization within that, maybe that, I'll call it a vertical, or there's some that are going to be these like shared services. So how do you choose when to kind of mandate across the firm we're going to be doing this versus within the specific areas you have the latitude to kind of optimize? Or is that a consideration?
I think it is a consideration, and I think it's one of those things where you have to have input. So in my experience, if the attorneys are not on board, it's just not going to work. I don't care how great the tool is, the sales pitch. If the attorneys don't like it, if they hate it, they will sandbag your plans, and not even always intentionally. Sometimes it's just this does not work for what we're trying to do. And, you know, they are allowed to practice how they want to practice. I think, they're the only ones who are attorneys. They should have free reign over that. Of course, the firm has guidelines and structures that we want people to abide by, but in terms of how you work up your case, it's up to you. I can't force you to use a tool that you don't believe in or
Mhm.
that you're telling me is giving you crappy output. Now, could it be that you're putting in bad information and that's why you're not getting the best output? Maybe your prompts aren't good. And then it becomes, do we need to build prompt libraries and give you templates to do it? But again, if they're not sold initially on the initial setup, it's not going to succeed,
Mhm.
unfortunately.
And we did on all of our pilots for choosing that one tool, we kept the same pilot team for all three or four pilots that we ran. So we had attorneys and staff on all of those pilots testing it so that I could gauge adoption, I could gauge ease of use. And that honestly helped make my choice a lot easier because, as you said, I'm not the one practicing managing it, but I'm not practicing. So having real use case like pilots is the way we go. And that was endlessly helpful. And also when you go to train that, when you do select one, you have the built-in foundation of trainers ready to go who understand the system.
Did you find that those people became like champions of that product? I know you mentioned the trainers, but that they were like really advocating for it?
Yes, especially on the attorney end,
Mhm.
and the staff for two different reasons. So the attorneys that were trying it out when we kind of landed, they were able to take my not so super users and show them use cases of how they had improved a case, how they had made their work easier, and then the staff, I solved that problem of being so protective of their jobs. They were like, "Hey, we're not going anywhere, man. It's just different work," and they were able to tell that story to their peers. So it absolutely created champions, not necessarily intentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that ease of use that you mentioned becomes so important because people are automatically going to default to the way they're used to. What's quickest, what works best for me. And if something is going to take them 3 extra clicks to do it, they're not going to do it until they realize what that outcome could be and how that could translate into better production down the road. So the training has to be ongoing, has to be implemented from the beginning, and has to be accessible to everyone. We need to reach all of our users where they are in their technology comfort. We have some younger people coming in who this is second nature to them. We have some attorneys who have practiced 30, 40, 50 years. It's all Greek to them. And I will admit, I often feel that way too. So, we need to accept that it's not going to come as quickly to everyone. They're not going to be as comfortable with it. And so how can we ensure that they feel like their fears are being alleviated, their concerns are being heard, their needs are being met in whatever program we're using or they decide to use, and that they can justify the existence of the use of that program to their clients as well. Your clients are going to ask you, are you using AI in your practice? And if so, how can we explain to them what we're using and why that is beneficial to them as well?
And you mentioned clients and AI. So have you had experiences where clients are also using AI and kind of
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. It's a good and bad thing, right? Because it gives people some ability to be informed. They're getting their information from a secondary source, let's just call it. But it's not an attorney. It's not right. It's also not a closed system. So it's pulling from, you go and use ChatGPT, even if you're doing the paid version as just the everyday citizen, you get this version, but it's not specific to Illinois and Illinois case law. So it's pulling information and telling you about Kansas law, and you're going and attacking your attorney, or worse, messaging the founder of the firm directly with this chat GPT. That's why I covered my face. This chat GPT message, because clients feel confident. AI is going to give you a confident answer because it wants to make you happy, but it's not always accurate. And so when a client sends this long, obviously AI generated message questioning the guidance of their attorney who's been practicing, even for a year, but for 30 years, it's really insulting. And also, it's exposing them in a way that they're not considering. Once you are now putting your sensitive case information into these chats or AI, it's now discoverable. And we're seeing this across cases right now where the New York Times is suing OpenAI and all that information is coming out. So you think that you're doing yourself a service by putting your information, your case details into here, but it's becoming discoverable. And you're opening up yourself to losing attorney-client privilege because you just put it into ChatGPT. And on one hand, I get why clients do it because they want to be informed, they want to protect themselves. It makes complete sense to me. But that's why you hired your attorney. And obviously, we have an interest in you winning your case and having the best possible outcome for your case. So why not trust us to do that and do what's best for you instead of you trying to do what you think is best, but you're ultimately hurting yourself in the end.
This is not as technical as that, but we've encountered our clients are using AI to create their forms to inquire about our service. So they're putting their case details into chat or Claude or whatever, and it's spitting out give me an email to ask a lawyer to serve me. So to us, it sounds like bots. And so I've had to train my intake staff, hey, we're going to call back every single lead, even if it sounds spammy, because for a minute they were like, oh, that's a spam lead. Like, don't follow up. And I was like, no. I think they're just trying to sound smart. Go ahead and call them. So it's another thing that you have to train. But then there are also bad actors in this space. So you have to deal with that. We have AI. We have a lot of AI tools, and I'm talking like we've streamlined it and we only have one. But let's be honest, every single tool has an AI component. And so our phone system, we're Ring Central, they have an AI component that has a pre-recorded message that says AI is taking notes, is how every phone call is answered. And if you have that feature enabled. And so our clients are getting mad about it. So they'll say that and they're like, if you're using AI, I'm hanging up right now. And we're like, no, it's just, I can turn off the recording of notes. So again, another thing to train to meet any client objections, to keep those clients in. It is never ending.
And to think we signed up for this.
It's great. The next panel will just be about like a therapy session. It'll be great.
I told you during our prep that it felt like therapy, just being able to get this stuff out, talking to people who get it. And, because operations, you have to teeter between the attorneys, the staff, the owner. Like, you have to have it's a really fine balance. And the language that you're speaking to 3 different groups is totally different because everyone's objectives are different and their fears are different. So you kind of have to be able to be trilingual and also stay sane.
That's right. And it is helpful to know that we're not alone in this struggle. That every single, despite we all happen to be similar size firms or whatever, but whether it's a single person firm or a multinational firm, we've all got these similar struggles with technology and AI. And so being able to kind of talk through this and voice these concerns and figure out what works here and what works there. And we can't copy everything everyone else does because we're all significantly different. To know that these are some good steps to take. Maybe these are some mistakes
Mhm.
that we don't want to repeat. And then these are some directions that we should be looking at in the future. We like to think about the faraway future, 5 years from now. Sometimes we in operations need to think about next Tuesday. Um, and so our needs sometimes are a little more urgent. And then we can put those long range goals and discussions on the back burner for a while and then tackle head on what is happening right now in the AI tech space that we can implement, we can troubleshoot, and that we can get people on board with.
Absolutely.
You mentioned different stakeholders, Lashay. You started to say like you almost have to be trilingual. I'd love to dive into and explore the difference between AI for lawyers and then AI for the broader operations part of the firm. And I think you might even have a hot take here, and so I'd love it.
I have a hot take. I always have a hot take. So my hot take is that I don't want our attorneys using AI. I don't believe that it's specifically in personal injury. I don't believe that it's for the attorney. I believe it's for our paralegal and our support staff. And I say that because when AI was first introduced, I'm talking a few years ago, when I was first seeing it, especially once it entered the legal space, my immediate thought was they're going to gut paralegals. And that's the fear that paralegals have, is you see this technology and the first thing you think is it's going to take my job. Valid fear, but it depends on how you structure it, right? So if my philosophy is to give it to the paralegals to use as a tool so that they can then still support their attorneys, but get through work faster, maybe find answers to questions without having to wait on the attorney to follow up or be available. And also just working through some of those problems on their own, which is what paralegals need to be able to do in order to be successful at their job. But having our attorneys using AI, one, almost every attorney, personal injury specifically, that I have talked to, they don't like it. And it could be, I don't know if you want to say it's because they're older, it's a generational thing. I've seen it with younger people where we haven't implemented it because they don't want it. They don't want to use it. They don't want to learn it. And I don't think they should have to. I think we should have lawyers focused on the one thing that they're the only ones in the firm who can practice law. I don't want to take their attention away from the one skill set that only they have to have them doing something that literally anyone can learn. I think that's the value in having an attorney, is that they're doing the higher priority task. I don't want someone who is $400 an hour going back and trying to fix a prompt. It's not feasible for me. And so I get from like Beth's standpoint where their firm has mostly attorneys and lower paralegals. So it makes sense for their attorneys to do that. But I think for like Emily and I in our segment of the industry, I just don't think it makes sense. And I think if you do it, you really offset the support staff, but you also piss off your attorneys. And I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Do you want to, Emily or Beth, any thoughts on kind of that nuance that she's describing there?
I see her nuance and I add my nuance. That is my view is a little different. I don't think attorneys I can't tell attorneys how to use it. I can only introduce the tool to them and then let their hive minds or our hive culture kind of help them understand how it can apply to them. So after implementation, I didn't think through exactly how many silos I have, but I have like 4, I want to say, different types of attorneys who use it differently. They do not use it all the same. I've got in my attorney that tends to focus on very complex medical malpractice or semi-truck incidents. He uses medical chronology more than anyone else. He loves to use that part of it to just summarize medical bills because he's got so many of them. But then, like, I've got another set of attorneys who are heavy litigators who have used it to prepare mediation statements that normally would take them 2 weeks to prepare, and they were able to smush that down to a good 8 hour day session, and not using it to write it, but using it more to research. Hey, I remember this in a deposition. Could you show me where that is? And it pulls it out and shows it to them. Not like I said, not necessarily writing, but just helping them digest tons of information. So those are just two use cases, but they all use it differently. But what you're saying, that your nuance of you can't tell them how to practice, you would absolutely tie your hands in terms of adoption if you said this. However, flip side, staff, I have a detailed
Oh, absolutely.
for them. You have to do it my way or the highway kind of thing. And so the adoption of that is just, hey, 180 from how we used to build demands. Now we're building demands this way, and get on board and have those challenging conversations, coaching conversations with people who are not getting on board.
And again, I'm a little curious, like, why is that? Why, on the operational side or the back office side? Is it because so many parts of the process are changing and you want there to be consistency, or like what's kind of under that a little bit?
Part of it is attorney adoption. So I have to guarantee the product that they're going to receive. So every attorney at my firm needs to understand what demands they're going to receive and be reviewing, or else I would have old demands, new demands, first draft demands, second draft demands. You know, it's for us in that space. Now, litigation is a little bit different in that, but as far as my case management staff, my assistants at that level, there can't really be any wiggle room because of the promise I make to the attorneys and how we're supporting their work.
Yeah, and I think that whole process issue that you brought up is fundamental when you're looking at adopting new technology or AI. That if you don't have those processes in place to begin with, a $100,000 AI program is not going to fix what's wrong with your firm. You know, if you're having trouble with your staff and in production and in the workflow of cases, you know, stages and matters, if those aren't in order, it doesn't matter what program you put in place. So you need to take a hard look at how you're doing things internally. And if there are things internally to fix first, do that. And then look at what programs can be beneficial to you on top of that. But AI is not going to be a magic bullet, you know, to change how your staff interacts with attorneys, how work gets done, how work flows from person to person, how matters get handled as they go through the different stages. So those are all separate from the AI conversation. And sometimes we want to look at technology as this panacea that is going to magically make everything better. Where sometimes we just need to slow down and look at maybe we're not doing things right to begin with. And so let's look at how we're doing things, you know, the analog way before we look at the digital way.
Yeah, I think it's also important to have those, I call it governance, to have that governance in place to tell people how they can use it and what's expected of them. Because, I mean, we're dealing with people's lives, right? Like, it's a really big responsibility that we're taking on, thousands of people. But we all know if you put garbage in or if you're messing up the process, it's gonna influence what you get, right? And if you are giving the attorneys bad work or bad output because you don't know how to double check it, or you don't know how to ensure that you're putting the right information in, it's like using a calculator. If I'm punching in the wrong numbers, the calculator knows what to do and how to do it. But if I'm typing in the wrong stuff or using the wrong functions, it's going to give me the wrong answer, even though it knows what 2 + 2 is. But if I'm doing 2 + 2 in sign or cost, it's not going to give me what I want. And so it's the same thing. You have to tell people this is what is expected of you in order to do this. If I want you to draft discovery, I have to tell you what's expected for drafting discovery versus a demand versus a medical chronology. And then also tailoring the AI to your team, right? So every lawyer has their own voice. They have their own level of aggression that they want to go about a case. You know, the way you might go for a case that's a traumatic brain injury is going to be significantly different than how you go with someone who has soft tissue. And so you have to train it to give the same output. I've seen people who don't do that, and you get these AI demands for really simple injuries. They're 99 pages long. And it's like this person had maybe $25,000 worth of damage, and they're giving you this $300,000 policy demand of a draft to send over, and it's not realistic. You have to tailor it.
I love your lead in of the calculator example. It's like a nice tactical example of kind of what AI, the kind of this AI moment is. And we talked a lot about like the people first approach. So Elizabeth, I think you were starting to describe it as the AI is not going to solve everything, the underlying processes. So one of the questions that I kind of want to sift out there is, what do you lead first then? So like, let's say you are a firm and you're looking at implement AI, or we think we want to implement AI. Do you start with the process side absent the technology, or do you help leverage the move towards AI in a specific program to then be kind of the genesis and the momentum to have all of those process pieces in order?
It's kind of both. You have to work on them simultaneously, right? So you may have chosen a platform, and if you think that that's the end of it, you are sorely mistaken. Once you choose the platform, you then have to put those policies in place about how people can use it. So Emily was talking about how her firm they have like an enterprise closed system AI, and then they allow people to use whatever they're most comfortable with, but not putting in case information. You have to tell people stuff like that from the beginning. You can't allow them to start doing it. Or if you do, you have to go back and correct it and catch them to let them know, because before you know it, someone's uploading your client's medical records to some chat GPT or Claude that they pay for on their personal card, and it's not closed and it's not protected. And now they have breached the confidentiality. So you have to put that stuff in place before you even get the platform. So when you're evaluating, you've made that decision, the very next step is, even before you start talking to your people about, well, we're going to introduce AI, we're rolling it out, is how are we going to allow them to use this, and what are the expectations around that use? So putting policies in place. You can upload this, but you cannot upload that. Some people do it where you can put case information in, but it's anonymous. Nothing that anyone would be able to discover who the client is. You have to figure out what that is for you. It definitely takes talking to some lawyers. Besides the ones that are in your office, you're going to have to call legal and get them on the phone to see what's appropriate. Seriously, it's a collaborative effort. It's not just, hey, I bought this AI, everyone just go use it, because there's so many aspects to it. You need to make sure you have those policies set so people understand what to do with it, right? Like you wouldn't get a Word demo and you roll it out to your people and then they're just doing whatever they want with it. You're telling them, I expect you to draft this document in Word, I expect you to draft this document in Outlook or in Excel or whatever. They need to know how to use it, especially because there's so many features on all of these things. Maybe you don't want them using everything. So you have to put that in place.
I would also add that if you think people on your team at any level are not using AI, again, you're sadly mistaken. As we were considering products to implement, that's when we uncovered all these, actually we were training our platform, and I had an attorney be like, well, I want to be able to I want to do what I always do, and that's put my entire caseload into into a tool, and then it just spits out what I need to do next. And I was like, oh, 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 oh.
Did you have a
So
heart attack on site?
I was like my face. Y'all know my emotions are right here, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, put a pin in that. We're gonna circle back. So anyway, I think if you don't have a policy now, even if you don't have a tool necessarily that you're writing it for, I would encourage you to go. Yeah, exactly. Go ahead and make your AI policy and put those parameters on it. Lashay, I love that real practical, hey, if it's an open AI, it is discoverable. And here is the statute in Arkansas where it says that. We put that, we're explicit in that in daily chats. Like that's not in a policy. This is a real world example of a case where an Arkansas firm got popped because they used an incorrect or a hallucinated site. And you just we just have to over communicate the dangers and the pitfalls of using AI, and then bring them back now to, and oh, by the way, if you use our tool, you're safe. And it's the best tool to use for that particular application. So getting ahead of it is really, it's here, whether you want it to be or not.
Yeah.
I'd love to tee up the Q&A. So we're going to spend a minute here on Q&A, and I missed Nancy's comment, but I think it was back when Lashay, you were suggesting the hot take, and she, I think, was commenting then, do you think that the lawyers are testing it on their own? And
Yes, I do. And similar to what Emily said, I've had lawyers who go, well, we have an enterprise version of whatever platform, and the lawyer will go, well, I don't really like that one. I like Claude. And that's what I use because that's where they were using it in their personal life. They started off when ChatGPT or Claude or whoever came out. That's what they were toying around with before they brought it to work. And then once it was like, oh, I like it enough that I'm willing to pay for a premium version of it and I have access to it, I am going to do it. And I've also had that moment where an attorney just casually let me know that they were uploading medical records, and I had a meltdown. I was like, what do you mean? Oh my God, I have to call everyone. Like, what are you doing? And it was an attorney. But it does happen. I mean, people are going to use it. Obviously, people who are open to it anyway, not even just from like a personal standpoint, they see the benefits of it. They see the perks of using it, how fast and efficient things have become since using it. So they are going to use it. My thing is never to say, oh, attorney, you're an attorney, you have a law license, you cannot use AI. It's more so in terms of the day-to-day, attorneys aren't doing a lot of the initial drafting, and that's what AI is doing. And so I wouldn't have the attorney create the initial draft, because if we were doing it without AI, you wouldn't be doing the initial draft. You would be doing all the red lines to tell your other person how bad their draft is. And that's what I expect from you still, is to tell me how bad AI's draft is, but I want your paralegal to do it first and do a rundown, because they know what their attorney expects. They know the level of work and output that they're looking for. So clean it up a bit and then send it to your lawyer, who's still going to redline it because they love doing that. So, get to the point where it's still like what a paralegal would have done, but the paralegal's doing it first. I don't want the attorney doing the first draft. And I think if we're having them use AI, that's essentially what you're asking them to do.
Love that. The next question comes in from Emery. He's asking, how does AI change where the intellectual property gets generated at the firm? And does that make it, does what makes your firms unique change with AI?
I'll take that if I can. No, I would say we've built our brand on, when we were prepping for the call, we talked a lot about how AI kind of ties into our brand and how it supports it. And when we are training the tool, we're still using our core values of justice and integrity as we're training how to use these tools. And so, what we found is that when you come at it from a perspective of we're not using this to cheat because our business is in the business of not cheating, of catching the cheaters, in fact, that we're coming at it to increase value for our clients. So that's where we start, where this tool isn't, it's this, not that. And then that informs your prompting strategies, that informs your expectations of staff, that informs your policy. All of that have support you it supports your brand and supports that intellectual property. And when you put those policies in place, like all of us have been talking about you must human verify every single citation that comes through the pipeline. It makes you better, is what we found. It's made our arguments tighter. It's made our demands more effective. It's made our we have the time to spend with our clients learning what they need and how to bring additional non-economic damage value to our clients, because we can spend more time talking to them, because we're not sitting there parsing through hundreds of medical records to build their demand. We are really, the human touch increases rather than decreases as a result of AI adoption.
I love that. And I love that realizing what it could free you up to do can really is a really good selling point for what AI can do for your firm. And I look at, the uniqueness, how does that change? It's hard to quantify that, but you could, we could buy the exact same program. But what's going to make us unique then is how we use that, the data behind it, the people behind it, the training behind it. So, if we have years and years worth of clean data that we can then, let's analyze these realization numbers. Let's look at market trends in our AR and our collections and our billing and our interactions with clients. The AI itself isn't going to fix that. It's how we use it. And so that's the way to set yourself apart from your competitors. So we can use the same program. We can have everything exactly the same technology-wise, but the uniqueness comes from how you put that to use, how you're going to train your people, how you're going to utilize that and input the data so it's used correctly. Like Lashay said, if you're putting in the wrong numbers, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So being able to give it correct, useful information to then work from.
And then also the AI, Emery, to kind of follow up with your question, in addition to what was already said, it's going to start learning the tone of the person who's working with it and how they approach certain prompts or questions. Because if you're using AI properly, you're not only asking it to answer questions for you, but you're also answering questions from the AI to help it give you that more personalized output. So when you talk about your IP going in and what's being generated, hopefully the person is already starting with their own ideas and it's not just draft me a demand. Hopefully it's a really detailed prompt about, I have this 55-year-old woman who was in a car accident. This happened, her life changed. She can't play tennis, she can't swim, she can't, whatever her normal activities were. And, she was really happy. And then she became this, and feeding it the knowledge that you have from gathering extra information from your client, because you actually have time to talk to them now, and telling the AI so that it's not just generating this generic demand based off of, I read the medical records and this happened and that happened, but how did it impact that person based off the information that you're giving it, so it has a more holistic picture of who the client is and how they were affected. And you can only do that by actually using your own voice. So everyone's voice is going to be different, but also putting the firm's your values, your core values, and your mission, things like that into it, so it knows the type of audience that it's creating the document for and how to speak to that audience. That's what's going to help keep your own voice in that output.
We have two more questions that came through. The first from Lynn, and she was asking, where do you draw the line at mandatory adoption? So they have a difficult time managing the CRM data adoption where teams want to create their own information flows. So how do you, again, draw that line at mandatory adoption?
I said earlier, I mean, mandatory adoption for staff is the only way we could implement. And that even is not fully true because my lit staff, my litigation assistants, my paralegal equivalent, they operate at the mercy or at the pleasure of the attorney. And so if the attorney says, I want you to draft this using AI, then they have the freedom to do so. But if the attorney says, I want you to use this template to draft my preferred template. Now, do I know that AI can learn that and do it faster and better? Yes, but I don't require my paralegals to use it in the same way as my case managers, or but I don't mandate that the attorneys use it in any way. Now, I also am using analytics to see who's using AI. So if I see, most tools give you some kind of management transparency into how people are using it. And so if I can see my attorney champions and I can see my litigation assistant champions, and then I can also see when my CMs are not stepping up to the plate pretty easily. So without the attorneys having to tell me. So that's I draw the line at mandatory adoption by function.
Yeah.
Is really.
For me, it would more so be about time. So when we initially introduce an AI, I don't want to make everyone use it. I actually prefer a little more stealthy method of having those people that you have in your champions who maybe had input into even selecting the AI or how they're going to use it. Have those people scattered out throughout the firm, have them using it. Ask people, tell people, hey, we have this new tool. It's available to you. If you want to use it, this is just starting out. But then as more people start to use it, the people who are resistant are going to be swarmed with everyone around them using it. And if you have KPIs in place that say, I expect this number of demands or this number of crimes to be produced every month, and everyone around you is meeting this except you, they'll get on board. And it's a way to mandate it without you having to say it's mandatory, because the people around them will make it mandatory. And then you'll get to a point where you have to say, oh, by the way, this is mandatory, because everyone's already doing it. So it becomes mandatory without you having to enforce it. And I only learned that after trying to mandate it first, and people were resisting and causing ways for the AI to fail. And I was seeing how people were able to sabotage. So this is a little bit of the people element of it. People were able to sabotage it. And I get it, because again, we talk about those fears, we talk about people not wanting to be replaced. And so you try to make it like this system or this platform doesn't work, I won't be replaced because your technology sucks. But if you get it to a point where they see, oh, the technology works and these people are seeing benefits from it, especially if it's tied to money, and you're saying, oh, if you hit this quota, everything above this is a bonus, is extras or whatever. Not only does that get the staff on board, it gets the attorneys on board, because now those settlements are coming in faster and their bonuses are getting bigger. And again, you have them, the people who don't want to adopt, you kind of have them being attacked from all angles. Attacked is a mean word, but it's true. They're coming from all angles, because now it's the money, it's the KPIs, and the person next to me and my friend, my colleague uses it and they're seeing benefits. So then it kind of wears people down. That's a good way for me to put it, wear them down, and then it becomes mandated.
So that's on the internal. Are you doing any screening for AI fluency when lawyers are now either lawyers or their support staff when they're applying?
Ooh.
We are not. We know that new attorneys as they come in and our new summer law clerks are using it. In law school, they're using it. They have access to Lexis Protege, you know, they're familiar with Gemini or Copilot. And so we know they are familiar and how to use it, but we don't screen for it in any way.
The only way we've screened for it is through like our ATS system, our applicant tracking system, because it can flag it, but not from no, I actually never thought about that. So thank you. That's something to think about.
It's something to think about, but I also think I feel like AI, the use of an AI tool is a trainable skill, just like using our CSM. Like it's and almost I would prefer someone that it just like from the staff side, I love hiring people who aren't even in the legal space because I don't have to retrain habits that they learned from another firm. Obviously not in the legal assistant space, but in the staff intake CM space that same thing with AI. I don't want any bad habits, people who lean too heavily on it, who are mavericks with it, because what if they go rogue in my system? So that's kind of how I think moving forward from here, I'm going to ask if they're familiar with AI or what tools they use for AI, or what AI tools they use in what applications. But as far as screening for proficiency, when I tell you that what I'm training today is different from what I trained yesterday, I really do mean it. Like it changes that fast.
Yeah.
So if they do know how to use even the tool that I've chosen, I got something new to share with them tomorrow.
Love that. Well, Lashay, Emily, and Beth, I really appreciate all you brought to the table, from hot takes to experiences to how you're thinking about kind of continuing to manage your AI adoption and just more broadly tech adoption. Thank you so much to those that stayed on. We'll be sending out a little swag off with some Confido swag as a thank you for staying on. And so appreciate it and best of luck over your holiday weekends.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kellen.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.